Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the cartoonist behind comics like Anya's Ghost and the recently released graphic novel Be Prepared. It's Vera Brosgol. Thanks for coming on, Vera.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
So we're recording this after you've returned from your recent book tour and promotion of Be Prepared, which included journeys across the country and into Canada for TCAF with your pal, Hope Larson, and even a visit to my home state of Alaska. I want to start there. How was that book tour? Was it exhausting, fun, a little bit of both?
It was really fun right up until the very end when I got trapped in Canada a little longer than I wanted to. Everything went super smoothly. I couldn't believe we didn't miss a single flight. We didn't lose a bag. Everything went awesome. All the schools were awesome. And then right at the end, I got stuck on the tarmac for 5 hours.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was bad. They canceled the flight at midnight.
Oh, man. Was it plane safety reasons?
Nope, it was weather in Chicago. Everything in Chicago got grounded. I know, the worst thing to talk about in the world is people's flight delays, but this, took over my life for about 24 hours. A little traumatic, but the tour in general was really awesome. I'm not going to blame the tour for what happened there.
I kind of feel like it was almost like it was meant to be because everything else played out so perfectly that it was if something was going to go awry, it was going to be a long delay because everything else worked out well.
Yeah, the universe was exacting its penalty. It was okay. At least I was on my way home, not on my way to a bunch of adorable school children somewhere.
Yes, that is true. I actually did want to ask about that. I've seen pictures and video of Raina Telgemeier and Kazu Kibuishi going into schools and the kind of experience they have. And I know I'm going to ask you about the Alaska Robotics Minicon you went to in Juneau, and that would involve you going to schools too, I'm sure. What is that experience like? What is it being able to go in and actually engage with the younger audience and teachers and librarians? What does that bring to you?
Oh, I love it. I much prefer that to being on a panel at a comic convention or talking at a festival or something, just because the kids are really, really fun. They're really easily impressed. So you feel like a really good entertainer just for being able to draw something in front of them. And that's your audience, it's hard to reach them otherwise. They're not really going to show up to a bookstore at 7 p.m. So
Right.
Going to the school is kind of the way to do it. And the librarians are so enthusiastic. They're so happy to see you. They make an adorable sign for you. It's the greatest.
That's fantastic. Was it primarily schools that you guys went to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did something for Free Comic Book Day on the weekend, but everything else was school visits. We do 2 or 3 every day.
Oh my God, that is so great. I don't know. That just seems like such an exciting experience, especially because both you and Hope had new books coming out. And it was just such a great way to embrace the audience.
Yeah, that was really good timing that we both had stuff out at the same time, because it's just spoiler alert. You do half the work with another person there with you. It's really, really, you get a breather to drink some water and stare into space for a second. It's great.
Yeah, that is nice. I did want to ask, because you did go to my home state of Alaska, you went to Alaska Robotics Minicon in Juneau, which by all accounts, near as I can tell, is a pretty amazing event with some incredibly talented people who regularly attend. You went before this, right? You went to other years?
Yeah, this is the 3rd year that they put it on. I've been every year.
I have some pals who go to it, Lee Post and Lucas Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, Lucas are awesome.
Yeah, they're great. And they every time they just rave about it. And I'm very envious. I would love to go, but what is that experience like relative to the usual con? Obviously it's not normal.
Yeah, it's much smaller, but it's just a well-oiled machine, and the town is so small and friendly. You can walk the whole thing, and everyone's so happy to have you. I don't know, I feel really comfortable in Juneau. I've been there bunches of times at this point, and Pat, the organizer, is a good friend of mine. So, yeah, it barely felt like part of the tour. It was just a total treat being there. It always is.
Yeah. And the summer camp part afterwards, where everybody gets together and goes out to the cabins, that just seems, I don't know. I remember, I think Lee showed me some pictures of some people breathing fire last year or something.
Yeah, I missed it again. I had to leave a day early to start the tour. Ben Hatke, who does Eda the Space Girl, taught everyone fire breathing last year, which I missed. And he did it again this year, the day after I left. I also missed sea kayaking and I believe fire poi.
What?
Yeah, it's incredible. Everybody has like little party tricks that they do. And actually, I did a needle felting workshop. We all
Ooh,
learned raven's tail weaving from Lily Hope, this amazing weaver. We listened to stories. It was incredible.
that's amazing.
Craft time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like that's what I think is really cool about it, is it seems like it's kind of a bunch of creatives kind of sharing the things that they're passionate about over, when you're in the middle of nowhere and near Juneau. I think it's amazing.
Mhm. With no internet, which I mean, you can get internet on the beach, so you'll go out there and you'll see like because Kibuishi would be out there holding his phone in the air, checking his email. But mostly you're just cut off and you're talking to people, like you're meeting new people from all over the country. The food is incredible. We keep getting really lucky with the weather. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
We saw the Northern Lights last year, which I'd never seen
Oh
before.
man,
I
that is.
freaked out. I mean, you don't care. You're in Anchorage, but I got
Well,
pretty excited.
that's the funny thing, is I never see the Northern Lights because being in a city that actually has lights going on and everything like that, it's kind of hard to see it most of the time. If I go outside the city, I can, but
Hmm.
it doesn't come in like South Central Alaska nearly as much as you would think. Like Juneau has like
Really?
a really unique climate that kind of is conducive to that, to Northern Lights and everything. But
Oh, I didn't know that.
Anchorage isn't as blessed. Well, Juneau has like, I think they have like five different like climates in that area. Like they have a rainforest and they have a bunch of others. It's a fascinating place. Um,
Hmm.
but let's talk about Be Prepared, your recent autobiographical graphic novel about the unique experience of going to summer camp. This is a big deal in a number of ways, not the least of which is that this is the first comic you've made as a full-time graphic novelist versus Anya's Ghost, where you were also working for Laika at the time. Um, I'm kind of curious. Like, obviously, going this route would give you a lot more time to work on it. But how much did being able to solely focus on creating this book change the experience of making a big graphic novel for you?
Well, it took a third of the time, which is sweet. And I didn't destroy my shoulder in the process, also sweet. It felt like a very civilized way to work, and I could have a social life.
Mm-hmm.
On his Ghost, I was doing evenings and weekends, so I was saying no to a lot of stuff, so I could sit in my house and draw comics. So this was much better, and I felt like I was a better writer. You know, it came out 7 years later. I think I picked up a lot in those 7 years, so I'm just much happier with the whole experience.
Was it intimidating at all to like, because like this is you jumping into a project where it's now like this is your full time thing. This is what you do. Was there like any intimidation factor to it, or are you just excited about trying this new thing?
It was. I mean, I was still at Leica when I was writing it,
Mm,
just at the tail end of my time there. So I kind of had a little bit of that paycheck to soften the blow.
mm-hmm.
For my new book that I'm writing right now, it's definitely like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? How do I make myself do this? I forgot how you do this. Um, yeah, and Be Prepared it felt like really easy and pleasant to work on. I'm not experiencing that right this second. Maybe because the weather's so good.
Is that the picture? But actually, your upcoming picture book is done, isn't it?
Yeah, I handed it in a few months ago. So right now I'm writing another graphic novel that won't be out for a couple of years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, well, that was when I was reading some interviews to prep for this. One of the things I came across was you said, I read you say something along the lines of that the writing part of the process is actually the harder part for you. Is that true?
Yep, I'm currently in the deep pits of despair on that. Yeah, it's really hard. Be Prepared, I wrote when I was recovering from shoulder surgery, actually. So there was literally nothing else I could do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just busted that one out. It was still hard, but I could focus. But now my arm works and I can do every other thing, and I would much rather do every other thing.
That is one thing I thought was interesting is like when you were working on Anya's Ghost, you didn't script that. You just had an outline and then you drew the whole thing, right?
Yeah, that was stupid. Don't do that.
Well, that's how Kazu works, isn't it? Like, because I had him on the podcast not that long ago, and I think that we had talked about how Hayao Miyazaki, I was using as an example of kind of a crazy way to do things, and he's like, I work like Hayao Miyazaki works. I'm like, oh no, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, Raina Telgemeier does it too. Writes in thumbnail form. That's hard to edit. I know Kazu's throws away lots of pages when he makes changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I got lucky on Anya's Ghost that there weren't a lot of editorial changes. But for Be Prepared, I was really, really grateful that I had that script because it got like big chunks of it got changed over and over and over again. I would have gotten really mad if there were drawings that were going in the trash.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like it would probably be, I don't know, like easier to kind of plot the whole thing out and, you figured out everything before when you have the script. That way, the whole process of drawing it would be easier. But I guess that's one of the interesting things about comics is like everybody works so differently. Like this morning, I had
Mm-hmm.
I did a podcast with John Allison, and he finds like you said how you find writing to be the hard part of comics. He finds writing to be much easier, and like
Mm-hmm.
you talk to everybody, and there's like different things work better for different people. It's one of the things that makes comics such a fascinating medium.
Yeah, Hope was the same way. We talked about this a lot, and in our presentations, we kind of compare our processes a little bit. She also much prefers writing, and she writes for other people, and so does John. I only write for myself, and I would much rather get it over with and get to the drawing part. I think also Kazoo and Reina have much clearer thumbnails than me, so that actually works. I don't think anybody would be able to decode mine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that sometimes happens that way. I know that there's a lot of different artists who have like, I don't know. I think I had somebody on recently, and I think we didn't actually include it in the podcast, but we were talking about like how interesting it would be to see what everybody, like all different artists, what their thumbnails look like, and whether or not you could actually
Mm-hmm.
recognize it as that person.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible
Yeah,
we
that'd be
would be able to.
interesting. Yeah, I don't think you'd be able to recognize mine.
Well, so Anya's Ghost. I'm curious about the autobiographical nature of Be Prepared, because Anya's Ghost was built off of some of your experiences, seemingly, but Be Prepared is all you. That's like your life with some dramatic flair thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
When you were setting out to create your next graphic novel, how quickly did you decide that you wanted to tell a story about yourself, and what made summer camp the experience you wanted to tackle?
This kind of came around a little bit backwards. First Second really wanted a memoir, sort of dealing with the Russian immigrant story,
Mm.
and I was deeply resistant to doing memoir. I really didn't want to write about that. I didn't want to write about my life. I felt like that territory was pretty well covered, and I like fiction a lot. Um, but I thought about it. They really wanted it. They were pretty pushy. And when the summer camp angle occurred to me, and I talk about this camp all the time, I tell these horror stories about it. And as soon as like that angle on it occurred to me, it was much more specific than like, here's how hard my life was as an immigrant kid. This is 2 months in my life that are pretty eventful and have a beginning, middle, and end. And it just felt like a pretty natural story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I got over my reticence pretty quickly then. I got pretty pumped about doing it. And thankfully they were on board with weird, overly specific Russian summer camp stories as well.
Well, I feel like regardless of what summer camp you go to, like the experiences are kind of universal, because I don't know. I mean, reading Be Prepared, I only went to summer camp once, and I was there for exactly one day. Where the first half of the day was spent like mortified of like like it's like you have in the book where it's like you go there and there's all these people who have been there a bunch of times before and they know each other, and there's this crazy social hierarchy that's already going on there. And then the second half of the day was spent being driven home because I knocked myself unconscious on a rope bridge.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so the kind of story, like that was like a Cub Scout camp. That kind of story still really spoke to me, because there's like there's a lot of intimidation to summer camp that you don't really think about at the time. They all seem fun, but then you actually go to them and you're like, oh man, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of what my childhood was like, just sort of condensed in this little misery crucible. We moved around so much. I felt like I was constantly being thrown into an existing social group and having to kind of like spend a whole year trying to find my place in it, and deal with mean kids and people older than me and all this stuff. And this was just sort of like a boiled down, efficient version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like a lot of people, even people who didn't go to summer camp, can find something to relate to. I did a giveaway on Instagram and Twitter for some merit badges I had made, and people had to tell their camping horror stories.
Ooh.
And I've been having like the best time reading through those. You guys should check them out. They're pretty great. I mean, people who just go camping with their kids as adults, something awful will happen to them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
People Nerds are not good at outdoors.
No, 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 no. I live, because I live in Anchorage, Alaska. Like camping is like a way of life in Alaska, and I think
Hmm.
I kind of call myself like the worst Alaskan ever because I just like generally speaking, not to be crude, but it's the bathroom experience. I'm not into that. And so like I went camping a lot when I was in my 20s and like when I was younger and everything, and now I'm just like I'm 34. I don't need to go camping anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's actually into the bathroom experience. It's just something you can put up with.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I live in Oregon. It's also very much a lifestyle thing here, and I was always kind of cranky about it until I realized you could buy a cot
Ooh,
and
yes.
bring a cot camping and set it up in your tent, and it's basically just like having a bed and you're off the ground and you're comfortable, and like as an adult you can find these ways to make it less miserable, and more indoorsy
Yeah.
that have made it okay. I recommend
You could always just go
for people with
motorhome,
bad
which is like next level. Like that's the glamping territory you start getting into.
back. Yeah, that's probably where I'm headed in the long run, but a cot is a lot cheaper.
That's true. One thing I really loved about Be Prepared was the fact that you didn't reveal that the letter in the beginning was your brother until the very end of the book because I don't know, like in the book, it's your brother at one point ignores you in front of his friends, and then like it seems like he's having a great time, like he's peeing off of a big pile of stuff, which is like a great boy experience. But I don't know. It's just I feel like it's such a microcosm of the experience that it turns out that secretly he kind of loathed it as or was like horrified by it as well at first.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I saw that letter pretty much, that he wasn't enjoying it and that he was also bullied a little bit.
Hmm.
But mainly that letter is so much cooler than the ones I wrote. The ones I wrote are just like they're at the back of the book, and it's like this two-page tear-filled, my stomach hurts, everyone's mean to me, please bring me candy thing. But his is just like visceral and perfect. I wish I'd written that, but also he was a lot younger than me, so
That's true.
I think he cuts to the chase.
So you said you were kind of reticent to go into the memoir realm, but was any part of that like were you nervous at all about putting yourself and your family directly in your work, or was it mostly because this was kind of heavily tread upon territory in comics these days?
Definitely both. I don't like to be told what to do.
Hmm.
So having someone suggest the kind of book I do immediately got my back up. I needed to get over that because that's childish. But definitely, I was worried about how my family would react being portrayed. And my mom is incredibly sensitive about how I portray our culture and our religion,
Hmm.
because she's still very involved in the Russian Orthodox community. This is a real camp. These are real people who could get offended. So I had to be really careful and run everything by her and make sure everything was okay. It was definitely a little delicate, and I wish I'd changed more names
Mm.
than I did. I kind of screwed up there. Yeah, this is dangerous territory for sure.
Maybe that's the second edition will have new names or something.
Oh, I really should. Yeah. Yee.
I do think
Oof.
it probably was a pretty interesting experience, like revisiting all that, because I know you went back to the camp, right, to actually take photos and kind of get a good feel for that whole area, so you can represent it better, right?
Yeah, that just kind of worked out. I wasn't sure this camp was even still going, and I wasn't sure how to Google it. But I found their Facebook page, and they were having an alumni day in
Ooh.
the middle of summer, which sounded awesome. It was like an open house kind of thing. So I flew across the country, ostensibly to visit my mother, but basically to have her drive me to this place. And it turned out not to really be an alumni day. It was more of like parents visiting their kids.
Oh.
So I was kind of the only person there without a child, but I think I got away with it. When you're a lady with glasses, you're kind of pretty non-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I snuck around, and everything thankfully was exactly the way it had been, except for the bathrooms. They upgraded that a little bit. They put some partitions between the toilet seats.
Well, that's good. Was it?
Yeah.
What was the experience like? Kind of just diving back into that world and like one thing I'm always curious about is like everyone kind of remembers things differently. Like, did you find that some of your memories were different than your family's memories and everybody else you talked to?
More that mine were not complete. So my
Mm.
brother would remember stuff that I didn't remember. Like he came up with me to the camp as well, and he showed me like, oh, there's the rock that we would pee off of behind the boys' camp. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you were peeing off of rocks. That's interesting. I'm going to use that.
Hmm.
Things about like the church and little the way that the fire worked, the songs they would sing, all that stuff. He just kind of helped fill in the gaps, and so did a counselor that I met while I was visiting. She answered a ton of really boring questions over email, that really really helped. This was 25 years ago. My memory's pretty bad for like last week, so I needed help I could get.
You mean the summer camp experience wasn't seared into your brain?
Parts of it were.
Yeah,
But other than like I'm not gonna bother to remember the way that the ranks worked
sure.
in this
Yeah,
organization. I don't care about that. I care about, bears and what we were eating and how mean everyone was to me.
right.
Uh, and like the period underwear up the flagpole, that was scarring for sure.
You're definitely better than me. All I remember is getting knocked unconscious on a rope bridge, which is not much of a memory at all.
Well, there might be a reason for that.
I'm kind of when you were going through like the writing process and getting everything figured out, did you find yourself ever trying to like, I don't know, like obviously you're dramatizing all this and you're changing it a little bit, but did you ever find yourself like trying to self-edit any real events at all, or were you kind of conscientious about not trying to do that?
I went to town. Yeah, this is pretty heavily dramatized, just because real life isn't that neat. There
Sure.
isn't comeuppance for jerks. Yeah, it wasn't that neat. And also, I had to go back the next year, and it felt better to just boil everything down into this one very eventful, crappy year than to try to. I mean, I don't think realism is. I don't think honesty is important, but I don't think truth is important in this
Sure.
book, if that makes sense. Because nobody else was there but me and my brother and a handful of other kids. The reader's experience is going to be more emotional honesty than factual stuff.
Oh yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I mean, it's like, if you read like Smile by Raina, it's like you read that book and it's like it doesn't really matter if every single detail in that book plays out perfectly as to the way it was in reality, as long as like it kind of evokes the emotions and the feeling of what, she went through. And it's like the same thing with
Hmm.
Be Prepared, is like as long as it like hits that, it's more important than like the specificity of specific events and everything.
Yeah, though I think kids do get upset when they find out that it isn't 100% exactly the way that you wrote. And that's something I'm kind of like braced for as I meet more readers. They're just, I think kids don't like being lied to, and they don't understand dramatic tension.
Sure. Well, like which events are you referring to? You mean just like things that happen in the book in general, or like the experience of summer camp?
Things that happen in the book in general, like
Mm.
specific events that didn't really take place.
Mm.
I'm not going to lie to anybody about it, but I also am not looking forward to explaining the things I did lie about.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. That going back to like the way you approached writing and everything like that. One thing that I read in that was an interview in the back of the newest edition of Anya's Ghost is you said the best advice you ever received is to not worry about the first draft so much. And I'm curious, like how it's easy to have that advice and have that in your head and everything like that. Is that something that you feel like you followed pretty well with Be Prepared, or was it still kind of a struggle?
First of all, I did not know that there's an interview in the back of Anya's Ghost.
Oh,
Second of all, I do not remember saying that. That's pretty smart and something I really need to think about right now. Um, yeah, gosh, I think I need to go read that interview. Yeah, I feel like I was pretty good about writing this one. I wasn't too precious about it. I got it in front of my editor and a bunch of trusted readers pretty quickly,
mm.
and changed a bunch of stuff, and it felt like it went really smoothly and naturally. This felt like a professional book all the way through, oddly enough.
Well, I mean, Anya's Ghost was kind of it was really a unique experience, right? Because you basically, from what I understand about the history, is like you approached Judy Hansen, who was the agent of Kazu at the time, or maybe still is. Um,
Hmm.
and like she's like the idea, and she said you needed to basically make the comic before she could start like pitching it to people, and that's how it went, right? You had to like basically create the comic before you could even try pitching the comic, right?
Yeah, you know why? Because nobody could read my goddamn thumbnails. I tried to like pitch part of a book, but she's like, "This is incomprehensible. You need to start." Fine, and it's easier too if you're an unknown quantity like I was then,
Hmm.
to give them a fully drawn book because they know you're gonna finish it. They know what the ending's gonna look like.
Right.
So yeah, that's how it went that time for sure. But it was also kind of a hobby. Like no, I didn't care that nobody was paying me to draw this 200 something page book, because I had a day job. It didn't matter. It was just for fun. And I didn't care if the book sold. I didn't care if anyone liked it. It was just fun. And now I care so deeply about all those things, and that makes it so much harder. Oof.
That is really interesting. It's like the context has changed. Like I figured that like the fact that you're a full-time graphic novelist now would be kind of more freeing, which it is in some ways, but in other ways it's like it makes it more important that it like hits because you don't have that, day job to fall back on and everything, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I kind of know a little bit more about the business. So when
Mm.
Anya's Ghost came out, I think it got like 5 starred reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I would get another star, my editor would be so happy. Judy would be so happy. Everyone would be thrilled. And I had no idea what a starred review was. I didn't care. It's like, oh, that's nice. That's cool. Why is everyone so excited? And now I know what they mean. And now I'm like waiting to see how it does and what people say. And all that stuff has weight that it didn't have before, that I kind of wish it didn't have.
Is that are the starred reviews, are those because like how important those are to like librarians and book buyers and everything?
I mean, I don't actually know how important they are, but I do know that like the grown-ups in my life, are happy when they happen. And I'm still just trying to make grown-ups happy.
It's important.
Yeah, and I think it does help, with sales and recognition and all that stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know that like I've talked to a lot of librarians. I'm sure you've talked to way more than I have, and it's just like for comics in particular, it's just like there's such a volume to like sort through and to figure out what's the right things to carry and everything like that.
Mhm.
Anything like if you have like a starred review from like the school library journal or something like that, like that's gonna play huge with like school librarians because like that's something they can trust. They know that that's a
Mhm.
resource they can believe in, and so seeing a starred review from them, that's big. Um, but I did want to before there's some other stuff I want to talk about involving with Judy and everything, but I did want to talk about the colors in the book because you colored Anya's Ghost yourself, but Be Prepared was colored by cartoonist Alec Longstreth. I was curious, like, why did you want to work with somebody else on colors this time, and what did Alec bring to the project?
Alec is a superstar and awesome and really nice and perfect to work with and much better at Photoshop than me, in every way. I hated coloring on his ghost and never wanted to do it again. Like
That's a good
you're
reason.
just you're sick of looking at those files. You just want it to be over. You've been over the book like 4 times already, and then you have to go over it one more time. Yeah, I didn't love it. I could have done it myself. It was pretty simple coloring. It was just the one color with a tone over it. But also for the deadline, I knew it would get done a lot faster if I could get someone to help. And thankfully, First Second was on board with helping to pay for that,
That's awesome.
which they weren't with Anya's Ghost. So that makes
Well,
a difference.
yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting. It's like, is there a particular part of the coloring process that makes it more intensive rather than the drawing part? I mean, obviously, drawing is going to be very intensive in a different way, but it's like when you're going back through and making all those passes, like you're saying, is there a difference there in the process for you?
I guess not really. I don't know. I don't enjoy coloring very much. I don't know how else to put it.
Sure.
I feel like the storytelling is done and you're adding kind of atmosphere, which is very important, but it doesn't make me excited the way that like inking does.
Mm.
So yeah, anything I can delegate, I'm happy to do.
It's more of like a joy thing. It's like that part doesn't bring you a lot of joy in the experience, but like drawing and inking and everything, like that's something you really enjoy.
Yeah, but I understand how important coloring is. So I do know it needs to be done well, and I know that when I'm phoning something in, you can really tell.
Sure. That's why it's good to get somebody like Alec.
Exactly. Yeah, he was incredible. He was so good.
I did want to ask about for a second. Like, sounds like they were very important for the overall. I mean, like they kind of made. No, they didn't make Be Prepared happen, but they pushed you in that direction and everything. I love For a Second. I think they're fantastic. It's rare that I don't enjoy one of their releases. You worked with them before on Anya's Ghost, and I read an interview that you said that they were like your first choice, like to be where you publish Anya's Ghost at. What makes For a Second such a perfect fit for the comics that you want to release?
They're very open-minded. They can find a home for pretty much any kind of story at the imprint, as opposed to, say, Scholastic, where it's got to be pretty kid-friendly. And I think you get a little bit more editorial oversight
Mm-hmm.
at first second. And that can be a blessing and a curse. You get a lot of freedom, sometimes more than you want. Like, I was definitely kind of asking my editor, like, maybe let's take one more look at it. I don't think it's quite done yet.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of the book, which really helped. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Macmillan in general, Roaring Brook Press is the imprint that put out my picture book, Leave Me Alone.
Mm-hmm.
And For a Second can handle any graphic novel idea I throw at them, I feel like. It's just like feels like a really good home for anything I could possibly want to do. And everyone working there is just awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really smart and nice. And yeah, great team.
I definitely feel like they publish, while they all are like, friendly to younger readers to varying degrees, it's like there's a broader spectrum there. It's like you could have The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang, but you could also have Box Brown's, God, what was the book he did? Oh, the book about Andy Kaufman that he had this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have both of those. You could have your book. I mean, like there's a broad spectrum there, and it makes them, I don't know, a much more interesting and exciting publisher for that reason.
Yeah, totally.
And also, they do have a very crack team. But I did want to ask, like, whose idea was the merit badges? Because those are awesome.
I don't remember. I want to take credit for it, but I don't know if that's fair. It might have been Judy. I don't know. She has these good ideas sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. I love them. I had ideas for like 3 more of them. I could just make merit badges for a living, I think.
I do like that one that was bathroom related. Very fitting. Very
I
fitting.
know. That was my favorite one. I wish they'd mass produced that one. They made a lot of the made one friend patch,
Mm-hmm.
which is very sweet, but I don't think a kid wants that on their backpack. I think they want the toilet paper roll.
For sure.
Which has pooped in the woods for anyone who hasn't seen it. It's a merit badge for pooping in the woods.
Did you bring those on the book tour?
They kind of had them already at some of the events, which is cool. I think they sent them out to bookstores that had us scheduled to come, and they were there at TCAF.
Mm.
So I just kind of run into them everywhere I go. It's pretty neat, and I have a little personal stash.
I love that you have like the supplies that are sent ahead for you, and then you just show up and they're like, "Here's my merit badges, perfect."
Yeah, it's great. It's really nice working with organized people.
It certainly makes the con experience a lot easier, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yo, everybody. Just want to take a second for a quick word from our friends at Comixology Originals. They're launching a line of exclusive original comics with 4 new titles available for free for members of Amazon Prime, Kindle Unlimited, or Comixology Unlimited. They include Savage Game, a graphic novel from the mind of NFL player Ryan Khalil, the return of Richard Starking's Elephant Man, the action-packed Ask for Mercy, and Super Freaks, a perfectly bingeable superhero mystery that has all 5 issues available right now. All can be found on the previously mentioned services, a la carte on Kindle and Comixology, as well as a print version of Savage Game through Amazon.com. Get on these exciting comics today and look for another wave of titles to be announced this summer. And now, back to the show. So I want to ask about Judy. She's one of the first 2 people you think in the back of Be Prepared, with Mark Siegel, and then of For a Second, and then Judy Hansen, your agent. She's obviously had a big impact on your life and career for the reasons I said. But I'm kind of curious, like when it comes to bringing these books to life, like Be Prepared, what does she do in helping make those books like the best they can be? Like, is she just a sounding board for you, really?
She's kind of more at the very beginning, like the kind of story I want to do. not so much creative, but I don't know, conceptual maybe.
Sure.
She's got a really good sense of what is commercial, what's a good fit for which publisher, which editor. She knows everybody in publishing. It seems like she kind of knows what's going on, what the trends are. So she's kind of my business pal. The stuff I'm really bad at. And then Mark is much more touchy feely creative stuff. So between the two of them, I feel like really really covered.
Mm-hmm. I like that you had the list of the creators that you think too. Like you think like Graham Annable and Sam Bosma. I have the book right next to me, but there was like I'm trying to remember what was the group? It was like
Story Trust.
Story Trust. Yeah, what is Story Trust?
Yeah, it was borrowed slash stolen from Ed Catmull. I think he's a COO of Pixar. He wrote a book called Creativity Inc., where he talks about the Story Trust, which is a group of directors at Pixar who all get together and kind of pitch their movies to each other, and give notes. And Mark was really taken with that idea, so he set up this little brain trust group for people who had projects for Second or elsewhere, just creators that he knew that he thought could use something like that. And I leaned on it so hard. It was such a big help with this book. We just get on Skype every few months, and I would send them whatever I was, ready to show, whether it was a script or pencils or something, and they would give feedback. And it was invaluable. That's something I really miss about animation, that kind of collaborative group of people. In publishing, you usually just get like your editor, maybe like assistant editors or something, but you don't really get like 6 people the way you do in animation, which really helps for getting consensus. If there's a problem area, generally all 6 people are going to focus on that. Or you can at least, get a sense that multiple people are having the same issue. So you need to work on it. So it's really, really great. I'm hoping I can keep using that resource in the future, if those guys will have me.
That's awesome, because I do feel like sometimes getting like external perspectives on what you're doing can help a lot, because like I don't know, I mean even when I'm working on like an article or something like that, you have a tendency of being very myopic about the way you look at things, and having different perspectives is really cool.
Yeah, especially really smart, talented people who know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to give you credit. So I mentioned earlier that I talked to John Allison this morning, and he said that speaking of having external perspectives on stuff, he said that your work when you did those guest panel or guest strips for Scary Go Round changed the way that he thought of his own characters, which I thought was really kind of amazing.
God. I think I was like 18 when I did that. I don't know that anybody should have been looking at those too carefully. That's very sweet of John. I've known John for like a million years, since high school, pretty much. He's incredible.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, I do think it's interesting. Like looking at your Wikipedia page, I was kind of surprised that Scary Go Round makes it in like that first paragraph that's on there.
Yeah, I don't know who writes those, but yeah, bless them. Bless you, Wikipedia people.
They're huge fans of John Allison. Who can blame them?
They are. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I did want to ask about like the Laika experience in the context of like how it changed your perspective on art and storytelling. Like, I love Laika. I actually went to the Portland Art Museum's exhibit on that, which was a really fascinating experience as a person who's a fan, because like seeing the work that goes into those movies just blows my freaking mind. You
glad you saw it.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. But so you worked there for a decade, right? Obviously there's
when you put it that way, wow. Yeah.
Obviously there's a difference between animation and comics, but how do you feel working at Laika has like influenced your art and storytelling now that you're focused on creating graphic novels and picture books primarily?
I think I got a lot of training in how to break a story into kind of the basic movie acts.
Sure.
My structure is not anything special or new. It's just generally kind of a thing that feels about the length of a screenplay, and I think that's definitely from animation. I feel like that approach to writing transferred over to graphic novels pretty easily. I learned a lot about acting, how to try to communicate without words. That's something I've always been interested in, but I feel like storyboarding really fine-tuned that, because you're not writing the words. You don't get that that tool in your toolbox. All you have is your drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So all your jokes and your communication need to come through acting, or staging. So that definitely helped with my comics, helped make them what they are today. And yeah, just also drawing really fast.
Yeah.
Yes, fast and expressive, and yeah, just putting the hours in.
Yeah, no, I was kind of curious. Like, I kind of figured that like the pace and like the kind of efficiency you have to work at, probably working in animation, would be the type of thing that would make it over to your comics work. Not that there's like, again, it's not a one for one thing, but it's hard not to have some carryover in how you approach art, whether it's in animation or if it's in comics.
Yeah, I think my layouts are not as exciting as they might be because maybe I'm so used to drawing in like a 16:9 rectangle.
You know,
It's okay.
I think sometimes, like, as much as I appreciate a really cool and clever layout, or like somebody who's kind of like deconstructing the comic art form and things like that, sometimes it's like some of my favorite comics, I look at it and there's really nothing special about the layouts. It's just conveying the story as well as it possibly can. Like, sometimes you overcomplicate things by bringing too much to the layouts.
Yeah, like Graham Annabelle's one of my favorite cartoonists in the world, and all of his comics are pretty much in a 9-panel grid. He can do everything he needs to do in that. And I've kind of realized that I'm kind of the same way. Like, I have to consciously make myself do full bleed panels because it feels like you're breaking the law by going outside of the box. And it's very rare that I feel like I need to even do that. I just sort of remember, oh yeah, I'm allowed. I'm not going to get in trouble if I do a full bleed.
What if Graham sees it though?
I think he'll be cool about it.
That's good. That's good. You know, I read this one thing in an interview that I really loved about your creative process, and it really, this, speaking of relatability and like in storytelling and everything like that, you were talking about how when you're working on your picture book, Leave Me Alone, you came up with a big part of it while you were getting a massage. And that is extremely relatable for me because I feel like I've grown dependent on massages for creative ideas because every time I get one, I get an amazing idea. What's the value for a creative in like kind of, you know, just like the nice thing about massages is you just kind of turn your brain off and just you're not doing anything. Like what's the value in doing something like that, or just like driving or whatever, something that allows you to turn your brain off for a bit?
Oh, dude, I'm so jealous that works for you consistently because it's only worked that one time.
Oh man.
I'm usually, now I'm lying there going, all right, where's my next award-winning picture book idea? Let's go massage. It doesn't work anymore.
Oh, no.
But yeah, the equivalent, I guess, would be like I came up with my next book while on a hike in the woods, and I think the key for me is no cell phone.
Yeah,
that is my my problem. Is the cell phone. You cannot have a good idea while you're looking at a cell phone. So any way to get away from that, massage, being in the woods in Alaska,
yes, that's a good way,
is really, really helpful. Yeah. So if you're stuck, put your phone away. Hot tip.
I mean, I kind of feel like it really just comes down to like we have so many things that are kind of occupying our attention, and it's like when you get into experience like a hike, or another one I always get, like I tend to get good ideas from is when I go on runs. I feel like just kind of, even if I'm listening to music, I have a tendency of just like kind of freeing my mind a bit. That sounds kind of cheesy, but it's true.
No, absolutely. It's not cheesy. Anything that gets you a good idea is not cheesy. It is treasure. It's valuable treasure.
I did want to ask about, your work on picture books, because you for Macmillan Children's Books, you did the Caldecott winning Leave Me Alone, and you have the upcoming The Little Guys. You've worked in an array of mediums. You worked in animation, you did graphic novels, but did you find that the creating picture books offered a uniquely different and maybe even difficult experience in creating comics, because it's a different form?
It is, yeah. I found it much harder, and I don't know if that's because I didn't have a lot of practice.
Sure.
But I mean, everybody says it's hard. Everybody who does it will tell you it's incredibly hard because it needs to look super easy. Your idea needs to be this like crystalline, perfect thing that came out of nowhere while you're face down on a massage table, in a trance state. Yeah, it's really hard. But it's rewarding in a whole different way. You can spend so much more time on the artwork in a way that wouldn't be practical in comics. And you just wouldn't do an animation because everyone throws storyboards in the garbage. Nobody ever looks at your storyboards. You don't need to watercolor them.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to do all my picture books with watercolor so I can really kind of enjoy that and try to make it as pretty as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like writing a poem instead of a novel. It's different. And if you don't have a lot of poetry practice, it's much harder.
Yeah. No, and picture books are unique experiences too, because like there was this one, I don't even remember who did it, but when I was a kid, there was this picture book called The 11th Hour that I was like utterly obsessed with.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite parts about it is like if you there was all like there was I think like a basically kind of like a puzzle or like a mystery that was worked into the art, and if you like went through it, you could figure it out. And I swear to God, I must have spent like days of my life pouring through this book trying to figure out all like the mystery in it, and it was wonderful. But I mean, that's one of the cool things about it seems like the picture book experience allows you to go to like a different level of detail and approach that you normally get to with your graphic novels.
Oh, I just looked up the book that you were talking about. I was totally obsessed with that book too. I forgot about it.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
who was that?
Graham Base.
Okay.
Yeah, that is like a dense book. You will spend some time going through that for sure.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That was amazing. I still have that at my parents' house. I feel like I need to look at it again because the art was amazing too.
Yeah, he did another book called Animalia that I remember.
I have that one
was
too.
really, really, really cool. Kind of feels like the Dinotopia things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't even remember the question. I'm just like looking at some books.
No,
Oh my God,
that was
they're
more of like
amazing.
a general statement about I appreciate picture books, but I guess I was just saying that like it seems like because like you got to do watercolors, which you don't normally get to do. Like, do you get to approach your art in a different way on picture books than you do with your graphic novels?
Yeah, totally. I will do my own coloring
Mm-hmm.
for picture books. I will spare poor Alec from trying to do that. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's a great place to try new things because you're not committing to hundreds of pages. You're committing to like 30 or 40. So you can try a new medium, you can try a new style, you can try a new kind of paper, and it's not a big deal if
Mm-hmm.
you have to start over. And you will have to start over several times.
Do you appreciate coloring in a traditional method than you do more in a digital method?
Yeah, yeah. 10 years in the animation mines staring at a monitor definitely made me appreciate paper. I missed it a lot. Uh, and I still do so much of my comics on a computer that any chance I get to get away from it, I'm gonna jump at. And I think it looks better too. I'm always drawn to picture books that are done traditionally. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's they're printed on nice paper. They're nice and big. You can get up close to the art. And I don't know. You can tell how they're made. And I like trying to pick it apart, pick out which materials they use, stuff like that. It's more of an art object, I think.
I feel like this totally sounds like one of those things where somebody says they can tell the difference, but they really can't. But I swear I can. It's like you can recreate watercolor type colors with brushes, digital brushes, and everything like that. But I feel like there's a difference. Like I feel like you can see and feel a difference in like actual watercolors, and I don't know why that is. It reminds me of I had an artist on one time when we were talking about inking, and he was talking about how he still inks traditionally because he loves like he has like happy accidents where something like really
Mm-hmm.
magical happens when he's actually using a brush rather than using working digitally. And I never really thought about it that way, but I think that might be true when you're working watercolor too. It's like sometimes there's like little elements that you wouldn't get if you're working so perfectly digitally.
Yeah, absolutely. Computers don't make mistakes. You
Right.
can program them to simulate mistakes, but they're not gonna, drop a little piece of pigment somewhere because your paper is wrinkly,
Mm-hmm.
or you're not gonna accidentally like spill water on something that looks amazing. There are artists who do a lot of paintings and kind of collage them together digitally.
Mm-hmm.
Like John Clausen does that. Chris Applehans does that to an extent. And I really, really like that compared to artists that are just using textured brushes.
Yeah. I do feel like one problem, even if you could have like the accidental drops on the page and everything like that digitally, you would still
Mhm.
probably press Control Z and get out of it. Because
Yeah, exactly. You're not stuck. You're
yeah.
not problem solving. You can start a new layer or fiddle with it forever.
Mm-hmm. So before we jump into 5 questions about you, I want to talk about like the kind of the growth of the comic market for cartoonists because, with like the rival of Scholastic Graphics for a second, Reina, Kazu, and yourself and many others over the last, decade plus or so. Like I guess what is Scholastic, I think, is on like year 12, I want to say. It seems like there's been a real boom in comics for younger readers and readers of all ages. Like my coworker's daughter loves Raina's work, despite the fact she hates to read. And I also, I really like Raina's comics. It's incredible. Like this might be extremely difficult to answer, but why do you think we've seen such a boom in interest in comics of that variety over the past decade or so?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm curious as well. It has enabled me to quit my animation job. This would not have been possible, 10, 12 years ago. I don't know. Maybe it's libraries. Maybe it's they're available in schools now. That's a big buyer of them. That's what gets them in front of kids. I don't know. I grew up reading manga sitting on the floor in Barnes and Noble.
Yes.
It doesn't seem that different from what's going on now, but now it's being made domestically, which is really cool. Which is a job for me.
Do you hear things from kids and teachers and everything when you're traveling around about what comics say to them and why that medium appeals to them?
I haven't on this tour recently, just because we haven't had much time to talk to kids and teachers. We were in such a hurry, but I have gotten messages and emails from teachers who have very reluctant readers who maybe have never read a book. And Anya's Ghost would be their first book, and they'd read it 12 times and get obsessed with it. And that's really, really significant to me. It makes me cry pretty much every time. That's really, really nice to hear. It's not something I think about when I make these things, but that's a really, really nice after effect.
Yeah, very rewarding. But I do think that like part of it obviously this could work in any medium, but it's like one of the things that's been really impressive is like there's like a real power to like relatability. Like a big part of the reason I enjoyed Be Prepared was because I don't know, I always felt like everybody had such a good time in summer camp and like I had a horrible time. And so like seeing somebody else, I was like, yes, this is me.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. When I would do school visits, I always ask who's been to camp. Raise your hand if you liked it. Raise your hand if you hated it. And then this book is for the haters. That was me. Yeah, I never saw that really reflected either as a kid. My whole childhood was kind of lonely and bad, and it was kind of rare to find a book like that. So that's what I wanted to make.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you see that in other books too. I mean, like even like in Amulet, like Amulet is obviously, I haven't had a all powerful amulet that has put me in a position to be like run like resistance fighters or something like that. But at the same time, it's like there's relatability to the experiences and to like the like having to take up things that you don't really feel like you're prepared for and everything. And it's really great being able to see people like yourself going through experiences or maybe even going through aspirational experiences that you think that you could do if given the chance. And like, I don't know, I think that's one of the magical things about all the comics that have been really hitting it big with young readers is like you can really connect with it and you see it with the way that people respond to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of these stories are really specific, like Raina's books with the teeth thing.
Yes,
I think most kids have some sort of tooth related trauma. It's like a really personal, visceral thing in your mouth.
Oh yeah.
So you're automatically going to connect with that. Everybody's got some version of it. But I also think the fact that it's artwork instead of text changes how you feel about it. I think the brain reads facial expressions differently than it does a sentence. So I think you absorb it maybe a little bit more empathetically than you might if it were just, or at least you absorb it faster. You definitely can read an image much quicker than you can text. And so you feel it a little more.
Yeah. I had a friend who had like, you know how when you're reading a prose book and it's like you just envision what you're reading on the page? He actually, like, he said that he just couldn't actually do that. Like, he couldn't visualize what was on the page. It was like there was something that disconnected in his brain, but he actually could, like, that's why he enjoyed comics, why he enjoyed movies, is because, like, he really connected with having the visuals delivered for him. And I thought that was really interesting because I'd never really come across anybody that was like that. Not that that's some sort of epidemic out there, but I do think that there is sometimes like being able to create those worlds and seeing it on the page rather than just reading it makes it maybe a bit more accessible for people.
Yeah, I think people's brains are wired all different ways. We were talking about this on a panel at a conference, to sort of talking about how great visual literacy is and how much easier comics are to read. And the librarian put her hand up and says she actually can't read them. Her brain can't quite process them correctly. And she'd had kids who would creep up to her and sort of admit quietly that they also had a really hard time reading comics. Like it just didn't make sense to their brains.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's good that there's sort of something for everybody. If your brain reads comics better than prose, read some comics. If it's the other way around, read some prose. It's just nice to have options for all different kinds of readers. Anything that gets you reading is all good.
Absolutely. So I want to close with 5 questions about Vera Brosgol, the person rather than the comic creator. And I want to start with your hobbies, which I know basically, according to another interview I read, include anything besides drawing. I thought that was interesting, but most notably, it seems like you're very famous for your knitting. What is it about your knitting that is so specifically your jam?
Oh, geez. Well, it's like 80 degrees right now, so the last thing I want to do is knit. Yeah, I've kind of nervous hands, so anything that kind of keeps that busy works really well.
Yeah.
Kind of offloads a little restlessness. I don't know, it's just sort of tactile and colorful and nice. I don't know. You should try it.
I should. My sister is a huge knitter. It seems like not that it's like something you want to multitask with, but it's like it's something you can kind of do while, like, my sister does it, and I'm just like, how are you doing that while talking to me while there's also a TV on? Like, I don't know how you can do multiple things. I find knitting to be kind of an astonishing thing, because it's just like your hands are on autopilot and operating at a different wavelength than you are almost.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then you magically get a sock at the end of it. It's great.
Yes, that is a nice benefit. You can get all kinds of things. She made my nephews and nieces and myself little Totoros a couple years ago, and it was amazing.
Oh.
It was so good.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was really great. Or another thing that you're on record of being a huge fan of is Rainy Days. And I love that as also a person who's a fan of Rainy Days. What is it about Rainy Days that is like, most people wouldn't put that in their top weather? Why is that a thing you love?
I would like to revise this opinion. As a homeowner in Portland, Oregon, I no longer like rainy days.
Because roof?
Because roofs.
Oh my God.
It's expensive. It's very expensive to get water out of your house. But I do like that you can work, you can draw, you can kind of do all your indoor stuff and not have that sense of guilt that you're wasting a beautiful day, a beautiful, precious day.
Yeah.
Indoors at a computer.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember loving the sound of rain on a roof. Now it's just like ratchets up my stress so much.
We have, like, if you made a comic about this, it'd be the most relatable comic that's ever existed for me, because I also, like, I love rainy days. I love how relaxing it seems in Alaska, because we have like 5 nice days a year. Whenever it's nice out, it's like you could not find an Alaskan inside. It's just the nature of it. It's like, oh my God, it's 70 degrees. Everyone get out, go, do whatever. But my wife and I bought a house, and like we were going through the inspection, and they're like, oh, like it's pretty good. Everything looks good besides the roof. It's a little sketchy. And so they gave us a 2-year warranty on it. And it turns out getting a 2-year warranty on a roof that was poorly made by the people who made it is not the best way to go. So yeah,
I'm
like
sorry.
it was a bit of a, like, it would start raining, and I was just like, please God, I don't want to hear a drip, please God. And yeah, it was a bit of a thing. But then as soon as the 2-year warranty passed, we hired somebody else who was very competent, and it was fixed, which was nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Skylights are nice in theory, but not in reality.
Right.
I love rain. I love rain in someone else's property.
Yes.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah, there you go. You just need
We'll come to your house, and it'll be great.
You just need to work out of a studio, or at least only work out of a studio when it's raining out.
Yes, exactly.
That'd be perfect. All right,
Yes.
So fittingly with your love of rainy days, we talked about this. You live in Portland, which is an extremely rainy city. But whenever I have a Portland guest on, I always have to talk about food. I know it's cliche, but Portland has amazing food. If guests came into town and they said, take me to your favorite restaurant, where do you take them?
Probably this place called Tasty and Sons.
Ooh, yeah.
Have you been there?
I went to Tasty in Alder, and I've heard really good things about Tasty and Sons. I imagine
it's really similar, yeah. any of the Tasty family, you can't go too wrong.
Yeah, I went there for brunch and for dinner on my last trip because Charlie Chu, who works for Oni Press, I sent him a message. I was like, all right, last meal, where do I go? And he's like, Tasty or Tasty and Alder. I'm like, okay. And so I went there, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's all like kind of small plates, so you wind up getting a bunch of stuff to share, and you try a bunch of different things, and everything's perfect. Yeah, I know Charlie's a big fan.
I one of the things that really surprised me is my friend ordered like a radicchio salad, and I was like, why are we ordering this? And I got it, and I'm like, this
with the egg.
Oh my
with
god!
The egg and oh my god, I love it. I always get that. It's so good. It's like a hard-boiled egg, all just kind of smashed into it.
Yeah, I thought my friend was insane for ordering it. It's like, it sounds good. I'm like, all right, whatever. I guess I could eat some salad, and then I get it, and I was like, get all this other food away from me. I just want to eat this forever.
Yeah. Oh man, that's what I want for dinner now. Great. It's not what I'm having for dinner.
I'm sorry. All right. Okay. So I'm always curious what people who work in comics listen to while they work. What do you listen to while you work? And how much does your playlist change depending on the stage of the process you're in?
That's a good question. Podcasts for drawing and or background television. For writing, which is where I'm at now, I have to have silence, which is horrible.
No, another like scores or anything?
No, nothing really. I haven't found anything that doesn't distract me. Maybe like I put on Beach House or just some other kind of like really kind of ambient, not too upbeat music for writing. But yeah, this is the part I don't like. I'm getting sad thinking about it.
First I made you hungry, then I made you sad. I'm finishing on a low point. I'm sorry. Well, let's talk about something you like. Lastly, you studied animation. You worked in animation. Naturally, I imagine you probably enjoy animation. What is your favorite or a favorite animated film that you did not work on?
Ooh, definitely top. Well, just my favorite movie, period, is probably Kiki's Delivery Service.
Ooh, yeah.
Studio Ghibli. It's just perfect. It is. I can watch it any day of the week. It does not bum me out. Hardly anything happens. All the conflict is internal. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. I relate to it deeply. Yeah, it's great. Definitely that one.
I love it. I actually, this might make you mad at me, so it'll be a good finish because we went sad, hungry. Now we're gonna finish with mad. I went to the Studio Ghibli Museum in Tokyo, and like the tickets they have actually have animation cells in there, and my cell that was in mine was a Kiki's Delivery Service one.
Shut up.
It was.
Man.
It's great.
You suck.
I'm sorry.
I was in Japan in September and I couldn't get in there. All the tickets were sold out like months in advance. So I didn't even get to go. I would be jealous even without the animation cell, but man,
it's
well done.
It's pretty cool. I'm sorry. Next time you go to Japan.
You know what? I can go and have a radicchio salad and you can't. So there.
That's true. I'm going to be more envious of the salad, sadly, than you would be of the animation cell and going to the museum. But Vera, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, David. This was super fun.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with cartoonist Vera Brosgol. You can find Vera on Twitter and Instagram at VeraB. That's Vera BEE. On our website at verab.com, as well as their new graphic novel, Be Prepared, in bookstores and comic shops everywhere. If you're a fan of the show, check out the show on Patreon. If you back it on there, you not only support the show, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher, and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find the show on social media as well. Like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD. Follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Mike D'Argenio, Dylan Campbell, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Michael Garland, Mabrind, Nick, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, David, Jason Massey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Dan Lee, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from the album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.